Good morning. I'm Charles Holtzkampf, the Technical Director at the Ndege Group. David has shown you precisely why Africa requires new financial infrastructure. My role is now to demonstrate exactly how our working model functions at this stage. This is OmniGaza, the platform enabling transparent, sovereign development finance. What you're about to see in this demo is our current implementation of OmniGaza operating on a live, custom-built blockchain. Okay, let me state the problem clearly. Traditional development finance suffers from three fatal flaws. First, opacity. Money disappears between commitment and delivery. We lack precise knowledge of where funds go or what they achieve. This isn't merely poor record keeping, it's systematic invisibility that enables corruption, waste, and mission drift. Second, misalignment. Incentives favor disbursement over completion. Get paved. And thirdly, information asymmetry. Borrowers know more about project realities than lenders. This creates adverse selection and inflates risk premiums. The countries that most need capital pay the highest prices for it. OmniGaza solves all three through cryptographic transparency, milestone-based disbursement, and immutable order trails. Let me show you precisely how. Okay, so this is the OmniGaza dashboard where you can sign in and sign up. And OmniGaza supports two account types, individual users and business entities, which can include government agencies, private companies, and development organizations. For this demonstration, I'll perform the KYC verification on our demo user account, which is the owner of a company called Moto Gold DLC. So I will log in as the demo user. There we go. And as you will notice is each account created on the platform will also have a corresponding blockchain account, which is this one there. I can actually show you that account on the blockchain, so you can see the account exists. There is information of the account which you don't need to worry about now, but specifically that the account exists, and that's the account name. So even though the account's been created, you'll notice under the verification status it says not verified, because this user has not provided the necessary documentation to be verified. So we can go ahead now and verify the account. Actually, before I do that, I'd like to show you where those KYC verifications are saved on the blockchain, so you can see the before and after I verify this account. So here you go, hopefully you can see my screen okay. So this basically gets a table from the blockchain and it gets it from a smart contract called eosio.reg, which is a smart contract that is for the KYC process. So you can see all the accounts that have been KYC'd. Our account, which is over here, the 11RLA, you can see does not exist there yet. But if we now go and verify the account, so I'll upload some pretend information, because in the demo I'm just going to manually KYC it in the background. So with you can see now the account's been verified, and it automatically goes back to the dashboard, and you can see it now says verified. So if we go back to the blockchain and I run that command again, you can now see there the 11RL account has now been verified. And I think it's important to reiterate that this, even though what you've now seen is running on a front end, every single step or bit that's done on the front end is recorded on the blockchain. and therefore cannot be tampered with. So this whole process of this user's now been verified, that audit trail sits on the blockchain and it can never be tampered with. I would just like to take the time now to address the obvious question: can someone fake these documents? Yes, they can, but ultimately they won't pass the KYC verification. On this platform and in Ndege group, each KYC firm validates each document against official government databases and their own compliance systems. Forged altered documents obviously then cannot pass the verification process. Ndege Group also maintains an internal KYC audit team and strong relations with regulators across Africa to ensure additional oversights for high-value accounts. And every document uploaded to OmniGaza is secured with a cryptographic hash, a unique digital fingerprint that changes completely if even a single character is altered. So this entire process creates a digital audit trail for each KYC verification. Now let's focus on projects. For the demo, I have created a development project called Motor Expansion Phase 2. So let's go into projects. You'll see various projects listed, and this is the one we'll be working on. Let's scroll down. I'll put my camera this side. So you'll notice there's always a bit of an overview of the project, and you can see Motor Gold is expanding their processing capacity. There's milestones attached, and I'll go through those in more detail later. Funding, again, you can see currently there's 0 funding. Reviews and extensions. Before any project can start working on the OmniGaza platform, it needs to be approved. So in production, a project could have multiple auditors or single auditors to approve the project. In our demo, we will have a single auditor, and I'll now show you the process of the project being approved. You can see the action there. I can now approve or reject that project. Before we move on to approve the project, I quickly just want to show you the project status on the blockchain. So if I run this command, this will list all the projects in the smart contract on the blockchain, and you can see the bottom one, there's Motor Gold Expansion Phase 2, there's a description, there's a single auditor, the funding required, and you can see there's no funding received and no funding has been released, and the status is saying awaiting review. So let's now go back and approve the project. And also to note is when the project gets approved, the first milestone labeled project start, the funding will actually be released. So I can show you that as well. So let's approve the project. There's a project, there's the owner. Let's approve the project. Now let's go back to the blockchain. And when I look at the project now, you can see that it's in the funding phase. Now, no funds have been released yet because no one has funded the project. So someone might ask, what stops auditors from colluding and approving fraudulent projects? And the answer lies in the incentive structure and transparency. First, stakeholders' actions are permanently recorded on the blockchain. If a pattern of approving fraudulent projects emerges, that stakeholder's reputation score drops and they can be removed from the platform. Second, the Ndege group reviews high-value projects before allowing them to proceed to funding. Third, and most importantly, auditors have reputational skin in the game. The AFDB representative who approves a fraudulent project damages their institution's credibility. The engineering firm that signs off on impossible timeline loses future consulting work. You know, this is all about transparency, and transparency creates accountability. Okay, so now that the project has been approved, the next step is for funding to happen. So I will proceed to log out and log in with a with our demo user, and the demo user is just a general user we're using. In this case, it's going to be a user that can fund the project. You can see the amount of money in his wallet, and let's go back to the multi-gold funding phase. And as you will see, the funding progress is 0% because no one has funded anything. So let's say this investor is willing to invest or to deploy 50,000 of his capital. So let's go and deploy that to the project. So 50,000. And just to say, for our demo, we have created a fictitious US dollar. That can be anything, euros, any currency that you want to use on the blockchain. But for demo purposes, we are just using USDT, which is a US dollar stablecoin. So let's transfer the token now. So that's 50,000. And you can see the funding progress has updated and 2% has been funded, and you can see the $50,000 in there. Now, and this is critical, even though the project has received 50,000 US dollars, the funds don't directly go to the project owner. They go to a blockchain-based escrow account that's tied to the specific project, and the funding stays locked in escrow until milestones are completed. And remember, and we'll show this later, that each milestone, once submitted, has to be verified by an auditor before those funds are released. So if we go back to the blockchain and we look at the project's smart contract, you'll see the project made Motor Gold expansion phase 2, and you can see the total funding received is 50,000 US dollars, and nothing has been released because milestones haven't been completed yet. For the demo, let's go back to the project and just pretend to fund the remaining value to complete 100% of the funding progress. So I'll go back and I'll fund the remaining 2.5 million. 1, 2, 3. Transfer. Oh, I don't have enough money. Interesting. Okay. 250. Okay, I'll give myself some more money. Just hold on a minute. I'm just going to give myself some more money. This is just for demo purposes, of course. Okay, let's go back and try that again. We'll just go to the dashboard quickly and see. You can see now, yes, that's updated. I now have, do I have enough money? I still don't have enough money. So hold on, let's go back again and fund myself some more. Let's go back and have another look. Almost. We'll go back and fund some more. In fact, let me just pause the recording. I'll make sure there's enough funding and I'll be with you guys very shortly. Hooray! So I reran the script a couple of times and you can see we're much richer than we used to be. So let's go back and fund that project. Okay, there we go. Fund the project, and let's do the remaining 1, 2, 3. Transfer the tokens. Okay, and there you go. It's 100% funded right now. Let's go back to the blockchain, and we can see in the projects, and actually no, we haven't funded, so we need another 3. We need a little bit more funding to complete it. So let's go back. Let's fund it a bit more. I'll do another. Let's just do 1,000. Okay, and we go back. There we go. So funding is complete, and let's just make sure that is correct. Funding progress. Yep, you can see the project is now active. Let's just verify that on the blockchain. So the status has gone from funded to active. So that's success. The project has been completely funded, and that means the project can now start progressing further and milestones can be completed. So an obvious question that some of you might be thinking is, what happens if a project fails? Do investors lose everything? It's an excellent question. OmniGaza operates on a milestone-based funding. So if a project fails at milestone 2, for example, only the funds allocated to milestone 1 will have been released. Because before every milestone can be completed on the system, it gets audited. So if everything is completed on that milestone, the auditing process happens, and the auditor can then release the funds. If the project failed at milestone 2, for example, an auditor will see that there's a problem and the funds will not be released. That funds remain in escrow and can be returned to investors. So this overall protects investors from total loss, whilst giving projects a chance to recover from setbacks. Okay, let's move on to milestones. Those of you who have been watching closely would have seen that some of the funds have already been released, and that is because this project was set up with an automated release of funds once the project starts, and the project starts when funding has been completed. So you can see this initial milestone called project start has released $50,000, and that was the recipient, and I'll show you what that looks on the blockchain. That recipient is the organization attached to this project. So let's go to the blockchain. Just move my camera. Okay, let's have a look. So you can see there's the Motor Golden expansion phase 2, the organization account that created this project, where all the funds would go to, and you can see the total funding released is $50,000. So let's have a look at that account. So you can see that organization account has now been sent $50,000. And just to reiterate that this entire process of sending money from one account to another is all audited. So like every other blockchain, it has a ledger of every single transaction. So you will see it going from that project to the organization account attached to the milestone. We will now proceed to complete another milestone and have a auditor audit that milestone for the next part of the funds to be released. So if we go back onto the project, you can see the project start milestone has been completed and has been processed. Now let's log out and log in as the owner of that project so we can submit some milestones. Let's go into the project. You can see there's a little button called Manage Actions, and there we go. So milestone 1 is site preparations and permits. You can see there's a bit of a time remaining. You can request a time extension if you like, and the funding amount is there. So as the owner, I've now prepared the sites, I've got all the permits, I've got all the documentation ready to request for the funding to be released. So let's upload some fictitious documents. You can add some notes which will be useful, and just remember, in production this can be expanded to comply with different jurisdictions, different government needs, whatever needs to be done. So let's browse and we go into there, milestone 1. So there's some various documents, license and permits, site survey reports. These are all fictitious documents, of course. Open them and submit for review. There we go. Okay. So now it's clearly saying it's awaiting for a auditor's review. Okay, so we will now log in as an auditor, review the information and approve the milestone so the funds can released. But before we do that, let me just show you on the blockchain again. You can see all the milestones attached to all the projects, and this is, each project has an ID, so ID 13 is attached to the project we are working on, and you can see the initial project funding for the milestone project start has been released. There's the funding amount, and you can see it's completed. So the 1 means completed, 0 means not completed. So the next milestone, which we are currently working on, is the site preparation and permits. There's a bit of a description. That's the funding amount, and you can see it's currently not completed. So it's completed from the point of view that the organization in charge of the project thinks it's been completed. However, the auditor still needs to review that information. Only once the auditor or auditors have reviewed all the information can it be marked as completed and the funds will be released. So let's go back to the website, and now we'll log in as our demo auditor. Okay, and these are all the projects he's responsible for, and that's the one we're working on. And you can see, there we go, there's action required. There are milestone reviews or extension requests awaiting a decision. So let's go in there, and there will be all manner of information there we can include. All the documentation is there. So something happens in the background, the auditor reviews the information, he does some physical checks, he does some phoning around, and he's now happy to approve the milestone. So let's go and approve the milestone, and there we go. He can also add some notes if he likes. So let's now finally approve the milestone. We'll just add some test notes. There we go, some test notes, and approve the milestone. So you can see milestone 1 has been approved. Now let's go to the blockchain and see what's happened. Okay, here we're back on the blockchain, so let's look at the milestones again. So which one were we on? This one. So you can see that milestone has been approved, it's completed. Now let's go into the projects. You can see instead of 50,000, there's now $350,000 has been released. And if we go back into the account, that's the organization account that's running the project, we can see that's been credited with another $300,000. And just to reiterate, this entire transaction, it's immutable, so therefore cannot be altered. It's transparent, and it's instant. There are no intermediate delays. Sorry, I mean, there's no intermediary delays. Okay, just to show you what it looks like on the project side for the owner of the project, let's log back on as the owner, go to the projects that he's responsible for, go to the funding side, and the milestone side, and you can see that, great, the site preparations and permits milestone has been completed, the amount's been transferred, there's a bit of a time stamp of when the transaction happened, and it's all been processed. Great, so that is milestones completed. And now we'll move on to the next section. Okay, now let's focus at the e-commerce side of OmniGaza, because OmniGaza isn't just about project finance, it's also a transparent marketplace for African commodities. Okay, I'm logged in as the demo owner again, who's the owner of Motor Gold DLC. I have created for the demo a refined gold product. So if you go into the product, you can see there's an image, a description of the product, who the organization is, the contract terms. So there you go, we have the price per unit, the minimum order, the maximum order, and the available quantity. Okay, so I'm going to log in as our demo user, which we're going to use to simulate buying the gold. Okay, so in we go. Oh, I need to verify myself. Here we go. Okay, let's go to the marketplace, click on gold, and let's pretend to buy 10 bars of gold. So you can see is the cost. $650,000 US. So we submit the order. There's the order number. There's the organization, the buyer and the seller. Okay, if we go into marketplace, sorry, my orders, you can see that the order exists now. Okay, so you might be asking what happens to that money. Similar to in the project finance side, it goes into escrow. So this is us looking on the blockchain again. We're looking at the commerce smart contract at the escrow nodes table, and you can see there's the order ID. I can also go into the orders table, and you can see that there is a single order there, and you can see all these various checkpoints, which we will come to as well. So let's go back into the platform, but now we'll log in as the demo owner account, who is the owner of MotorGold DRC. And you go to marketplace. You can see there we go, action required, because an order has now been placed, and so it's up to me to back the gold and start that process. So let's click on take action, and this is now where you can see all these various checkpoints. These checkpoints, the way to think of it, about it is, in essence, it helps track the movement of a product. So every time a product moves and there's a reason for it to be scanned or notes taken or anything that is required for the gold to move on or that product to move on, that can also be recorded on the blockchain. So anyone dealing with that product could, in essence, be given an account for OmniGaza, and this is what we're going to demo right now. So as the gold moves from each checkpoint, someone has to physically sign it, and they do it with their blockchain authentication, and all of that is tracked on chain. So as you'll see, all these checkpoints, most of these checkpoints, for the demo's purposes, the demo owner can sign for the outbound and the inbound until the last checkpoint, which is attached to the demo user, because essentially that's the buyer of the gold. So when the gold eventually arrives at the end buyer, they will have to physically sign saying yes, receive the gold, and add some notes. So let's take action. Let's sign the outbound and the inbound of the first checkpoint. And we add some notes. We say the gold has been packed. Okay. Also in production, you can add documentation, and that documentation will be saved on Amazon S3, but the hash of the document will be saved on the blockchain. And that's important because you don't want to save documents on the blockchain, but you do want to have a link to that document on the blockchain. And when we save it to Amazon S3, we will take a hash of that document, and that hash of the document will be saved on the blockchain. So if anything changes on that document on Amazon S3, the hash of the document will change, and that will then not correspond to the hash on the blockchain. And you must remember, we mentioned this earlier, is the information on the blockchain cannot be altered. So let's look at the order again. If we go into the order, you can see the first checkpoint has been signed for, the inbound and the outbound has been signed, and you can see there's some documents which we haven't attached, but you can, and there's the notes, the gold has been packed. So I'm now just going to work through all the different checkpoints, and then I'll come back when it's finished. Okay, as if by magic, I have now completed all the checkpoints apart from the final one, which is the buyer receiving the gold and signing for it. So if we go back to the blockchain and we go look at the orders, you can see all the checkpoints has been signed. There's dates of when it was signed and which account on the blockchain signed for it. Okay, the final one, you can see the inbound has not been signed for because the user has not yet signed that it's received the gold. Okay, just to show you, so at this point the money is still in escrow, and it's only once the buyer signs for that final step where the money will be released to the account associated with the organization. So the Motor Gold DRC organization is associated with this account, and you can see currently there is no money in it because it hasn't been paid for the gold. So let's go back. Let's now log in as the buyer of the gold, which is demo user. Go into the marketplace, and you can see there's an action required for that person. And let's take the action. So now we've received the gold. We've done all the necessary inspection we need to do, and we're happy for the money to be released. So we sign the inbound, received, and we confirm. And now let's check. Let's go back to the blockchain. Let's first look at escrow, and you can see there's no more there's no more rows in the escrow notes because that order has now been completed. And if we go back into Motor Gold DRC, you can see that account has now been updated, so the funds has been released. So you might ask, what stops someone from falsely updating the custody chain? So each checkpoint agent will have a login and therefore a cryptographic private key associated with that account that they control. And so when they scan a shipment, they are digitally signing the transaction with this key, and that's how it updates the blockchain. If someone tries to forge an update without the proper key, the blockchain rejects it. It just cannot be done. Additionally, checkpoint agents are verified third-party customs officials, port authorities, certified logistic providers, and they have regulatory obligations and reputational stakes. If a pattern of fraudulent updates emerge, that agent loses their credentials and faces legal consequences. The system combines cryptographic security with real-world accountability, because on a blockchain, every single step is audited and can be seen. Great, so thank you. That's the e-commerce side done, and we'll move on to the next sections now. Why this changes everything. In a traditional model, for development finance, the lender disperses funds up front, often in large tranches. They hope the recipient completes the project as promised. There's very limited real-time visibility into what's actually happening on the ground, whether construction is progressing, whether procurement is happening, and whether funds are being used properly. Altogether, this creates very high risk, which leads to high interest rates and in many cases project delays or failures. In the OmniGaza model, funds are securely locked in smart contract escrow, so no one can misuse or divert them. Money is released only when predefined, independently verified milestones are completed. Every stage becomes transparent to all parties, lenders, governments, auditors, and even the public if needed. With dramatically lower risk, the cost of capital drops, making previously unattainable projects finally bankable. OmniGaza turns development finance from a trust-based system into an evidence-based one. Now, let's look at the commodity trade model. In the traditional model, commodity trades often rely heavily on trust and paperwork that can be lost, forged, or delayed. Supply chains remain opaque, especially in high-risk regions or where intermediaries are involved. Fraud, double financing, and document manipulation are constant threats. Because of these risks, insurance and compliance costs rise significantly. In the OmniGaza model, every movement of goods is recorded using cryptographic proof, creating an immutable, tamper-proof order trail. Custody becomes fully transparent from source to warehouse to export terminal. Fraud becomes nearly impossible because each step must match the blockchain record. This reduces insurance premiums, simplifies compliance, and allows traders to operate with far more confidence. OmniGaza transforms commodity trade into a transparent, verifiable system where trust is replaced by real-time truth. And this isn't just theoretical. Guinea-Bissau implemented a blockchain-based wage management system in May 2024, and by November in the same year, 26,600 public officials were tracked on that immutable ledger. The wage will reduce from 80% to 50% of tax revenue, and an annual saving was made of 45 million euros. And that's just one small nation, one narrow use case, and just imagine this on a continental scale. OmniGaza is the technical infrastructure for the African Sovereign Development Trust. Everything David described, resource-backed financing, transparent procurement, milestone-based development, will eventually run on this platform. The African Federation Treaty Framework provides the governance, and OmniGaza provides the execution. Now, for the engineers in the room. I hope there are some engineers in the room. Just a bit of a technical specification on what OmniGaza is built upon. So for the blockchain technology, we utilize Antelope, which is a layer 1. We've written those smart contracts and we've audited the security as well. The front end is a mixture of React and Next.js. The back end is mostly JavaScript with a Postgres database. File storage, we use FileN and AWS S3. Security, it's the speed of blockchain that's very, very fast. The cost from transactions on the blockchain will vary. It depends on multiple factors. Of course, we are fully open for institutional integration. Okay, so what are we offering? Pilot integration, so you can test OmniGaza with your institution's development projects. We offer API access, so you can connect your systems to our infrastructure and effectively utilize our underlying blockchain. We can create a white label solution, so you can deploy OmniGaza under your own institution brand. And of course, technical consultation. Our team will always be there to support your implementation.